I recently beat my PB of 23 on a rule world. So here's a 24 streak. I'm gonna go through each round and explain as I go. Um, so round one we have winter coverage, which is only in like a few countries. But it's very mountainous and it also slims it down. But the black car is what really gives it away, which is South Korea, because South Korea is the only place with winter coverage and a black car. I mean, I guess you could get some in Argentina, but that's not gonna be mountainous like that. Here I'm only on one streak, so I don't really look too long, but it just feels like New Zealand. And we have this little metal wrap on the pole down here, which I don't know if I even saw when I first played this, but you can barely make it out, which is a thing for New Zealand poles. You also get that in Tasmania, but this feels more New Zealand than Tasmania. It ends up being North Island, which is a little surprising to me. I don't know if I would have got this round without the bollards on the side of the road. Um, the landscape doesn't really fit, but the bollards are white with this red and yellow, which are the Cambodian bollards. So I end up going Cambodia, and ends up being near the big lake, near Angkor Wat. Round three, we have snow coverage, and we also have the snorkel. And there's usually camping equipment here, but it's the big rack on the top of the car with snorkel, which you get in Mongolia. And I've had there's actually a couple Mongolia rounds in this seed, so you'll see that again. For round five, um, it might be low cam. I can't really tell, but the biggest hint is this yellow and black pole down here, which you get in Taiwan. Um, so I know that's Taiwan right away. It ends up being actually on Penghu County, which makes sense because there's a lot of low cam there. This one, there's pretty much nothing to go on except for this little antenna here, which you get in pretty much every European country. Um, but since it's a random forest, I end up going Czechia. It's a little mountainous too, so it's not going to be like Denmark or Netherlands or Belgium. Um, I guess it could be Slovakia, but most of the time when you just put in a forest, it's Czechia. It's usually Gen 4 though. Theoretically, I guess it could be Austria or somewhere else, and I got kind of lucky, I guess, because it's a pretty hard location. Here, this feels like Borneo immediately. And we have this pole here, which is Borneo Malaysia pole. Um, but I still don't know for sure. But the biggest hint is there's like kind of two lines here, which is the start of like a double white line in the middle, which you only get double white lines in Malaysia, and as well as the road's also super nice in Malaysia, and you can kind of see a license plate, and it looks doesn't look like an Indonesian license plate, so I end up going Sabah here, and it's not. It's a little south of that, west of that. Here it's pretty tropical. I'm just zooming in the car to see what's weird, but the biggest hint is this little cross on the back. You get the cross on the back of signs in Colombia, so I know right away it's Colombia. Also, there's this little bike in the distance, which are super common that people ride bikes in Colombia, or like motorcycles, I guess. So for round nine here, we have Gen 2 with snowy coverage. It seems to me, I guess the narrow road with this sort of winter coverage, it just immediately strikes me as Nordic. And most of the time when it's winter coverage, it's Sweden. So I don't really spend too much time just send Sweden because that's the most likely one, and don't really want to spend too much time on around yet. Here it's sandy. But the biggest clue is this rift in the sky, which you get in Albania, Montenegro, and Senegal. But this doesn't feel like Albania or Montenegro, so I go Senegal because it's deserty. I go near these because this is what that region generally looks like. Here, there's not too much to go on. There's no car meta, which some countries it kind of slims it down because this feels like Southeast Asia. But one of the biggest things is that there's a lot of palm trees. I always see tons of palm trees in Philippines. However, the thing that was throwing me off is the dirt was really red. So I went Palawan because the dirt's really red in Palawan. Also, it's really mountainous, so that makes sense for the Philippines. And ends up being Mindanao actually, which was a little surprising to me because Mindanao doesn't usually look like that. Okay, this round actually looks kind of like North America, Nevada maybe. But the biggest I could easily see this being like Nevada, Utah, or something. Even Idaho maybe. But there's a black car here, which you don't get in the U.S. So and then I checked the sun and it's to the north. So you have to be in the southern hemisphere. So the only place that fits is Argentina, somewhere in the colder deserts of Argentina. Okay, round 13 here. We have these big poles on the side, which are like pretty common in like I'd say there's similar ones to this in like Lithuania, Russia, Romania, maybe Bulgaria. I think Latvia as well. But they're probably, I think they're Soviet poles. But this highway's literally in the, so like it's a pretty nice highway with this asphalt and whatnot in the middle of nowhere, and it's like pretty, looks really long. So I just go Russia because that's usually what that means. Here we have oil palms, which are very common in Indonesia and Malaysia. But the road's pretty nice, so I ended up going in Malaysia. This could have easily been Sumatra, I think. But you tend to get dirt roads in Sumatra and the oil palm places. So it ends up being Malaysia, and I was a little bit lucky, but kind of need the luck to get a streak this big. Here we have this skinny metal pole that's like in a hexagon shape, I think, or octagon. I can't tell, but I see them all the time in the Philippines. Again, we have these tons of palm trees, which are super common in the Philippines. No car meta as well, which also fits for the Philippines, and it's also mountainous again, which is also fits for the Philippines. And I'm not really too sure where in the Philippines because we don't have like red dirt like last time, so I just hedge in the middle, and it ends up being a little north. This one was a repeat, so I send right away. Um, but I know this just looks like the Rocky Mountains. I actually don't think it is the Rocky Mountains. It's like near Lake Tahoe, which I guess is like the Sierra Nevadas. Um, but it does fit for that area. This one looks like almost like San Marino, except it's Generation 3 camera and has a long antenna, so it's probably not San Marino. So I just guess Italy, a little north of San Marino in this valley, because I see a lot of cloudy coverage around here, and I guess a little north of Bologna, and it ends up being very, very close guess. Just lucky plonk there. Here we have red dirt, which you only get in a few countries, and then the trees strike me as very Asian. You get these a lot in Thailand, specifically, and maybe a little bit in Cambodia, like these planted little farms with like the like tropical plants. I guess they're not really. It's not. This does not strike me as like the Amazon or anything, so I know it's not Brazil. I ended up going Thailand, knowing it could be Cambodia. It ends up being right on the border. So that was a pretty close guess. This one off the bat looks Asian. I was thinking Indonesia. But the biggest clue is actually the car. It's an antenna, which looks kind of like the Latin America antenna, but it's actually tilted slightly to the right. Um, no, if it was straight, it would go along this line, but it's slightly to the right. So that's the Cambodia antenna, so I know it's Cambodia, and I can send it without looking at the rest. So for round 20 here, it's getting on a pretty big streak, so I think I might start to slow down a little bit. But we're somewhere like kind of tropical, I guess, with this green landscape. But the biggest clue is this car here. A little red blur on the right, and you can barely make out a little blue. You might not even be able to. But it's just this red here, and that's the Sri Lanka car, so I know we're in Sri Lanka. And the landscape fits as well for Sri Lanka. Here, this NMPZ almost looks like Kyrgyzstan, somewhere in Asia, but we turn around and have this camping equipment and the snorkel in the car, so we know it's Mongolia. I had that earlier, and it ends up actually being very similar to the location we had earlier. Here we have black car, which is more this, well, off the bat, it strikes me as Borneo. Um, Borneo, so it's either Malaysia or Indonesia, but we have the black card, which is more common in Malaysia. But the biggest hint here is the double white line, which you only get in Malaysia and not Indonesia. So I know that's Malaysia. I don't know. I don't think I saw it the first time, or else I would have gone Malaysia right away. But when I zoom in, I noticed the double white line, and as well as there's also chevrons down here, which have yellow, oh sorry, white and black stripes on the poles, which is a Malaysia thing as well. So there's quite a few things that point to Malaysia here. And I'm going Sarawak because it looks really flat, and Sarawak's really flat, and it ends up being 22 miles away. Here we have a snorkel in the car, but this isn't the Mongolia car, so we know it's Kenya. We also have the Kenya follow car. The next round is actually Kenya as well. With the follow car again here, it follows the Go car around Kenya to keep it safe, I guess. But it looks kind of weird, so actually you have to check for the snorkel just to make sure. It has the mirrors on the car, which is pretty rare. It throws me off for a second, but it's because it's a national park car. So it's a Kenya National Park. So that's 24. That's where my streak ends. I have one more round where I miss here, and it's off the bat, this dry landscape reminds me of like near like the Black Sea in Europe. And we have the EU antenna, so I know it's somewhere in Europe. My thoughts were Romania, Bulgaria, or Russia. There's this weird mountain here, which kind of points to more Bulgaria and Romania, but I wasn't sure which one of the two it would be out of those two. So I ended up going Russia because I felt like Russia was the most likely candidate, even though I wasn't really didn't really think it was Russia necessarily. But Russia was also just my gut, so I ended up going Russia. But I'm like heavily considering Eastern Europe all the way up until I guess. And I actually put my mouse is currently on Bulgaria, and it goes, but then I end up just sending it, and it ends up being Bulgaria, unfortunately. And I actually got 15 in a row after this, so I could have got a much bigger streak if I just went Bulgaria. But that is a 24 streak. So if you enjoyed the video, you can subscribe, and thanks for watching.